Alright, welcome back everybody. My name is Dustin. In our last video, we created the animation system. And if you missed it, you can check out that video right here. However, in this video, we're going to actually start looking into input management, and we're going to start with the keyboard. So there's something that all input devices have in common, or at least the ones that we're going to be looking at, and that is that they all have buttons. A mouse has buttons, gamepads have buttons, and keyboards also have buttons that we call keys. So first thing we're going to do is create a simple struct that we can use for all of our input devices. So let's do that now. Down here in our Scion windowing, we already created this inputs folder. So what we're going to do here is just go new, and just an H file, and we're just going to call it button.h. Alright, so the button is going to be part of our namespace, and that's namespace, not name source, space, Scion windowing, and we'll call it inputs, and it's just going to be a simple struct button. Cool. Alright, in our case, a button is going to have three states. Either it's pressed, or just released. The difference between pressed and just pressed is being currently held down, and just pressed you only want it to trigger one time. Where pressed it will be constantly continuing. So we'll go bool B is pressed, and that'll start as false. B just pressed, and that will start as false as well. These are all going to start as false. And B just released. Whoops. Released. Cool. Also false. Awesome. We also need a way to update our button's current state for each frame, and also to reset the button state at the end of each frame. So we'll have two functions for that. Simple functions, void update. You can call it update state or whatever, and that's going to be bool B pressed. So is it currently pressed? And then we're going to have also a void reset, and that could also be reset state. Cool, we got these two functions. Let's create them. Alright, so that was created for us. Let's go to that file. And here we'll just leave those. Don't worry about the namespace because these are very small functions. Alright, so if we're updating the state of the button, we need to check to see if the current button is already pressed, and also the state that we're sending in. So let's go B just pressed is equal to not B is pressed, because if it's already pressed, it's not just pressed. And B pressed, so this is changing the state. So what this will do is it'll check both and set this value. This is just a Boolean value. So if it's not already being pressed and we're sending in pressed, update this to true. If not, this will be false. Okay, so B just released will be the same idea except opposite. So it wants to see if it is pressed, and we're sending in not pressed. So it's changing it from this must be pressed, and we must be telling it to not be pressed. And B is pressed is always checked here. So B pressed is actually equal to the update, so what we're updating the state to. Alright, for the reset, it's pretty simple. All we want to do is reset the just pressed and just released variables back to false. We don't want to reset the press value. The press value needs to be held and only updated if it is actually changed here. Okay, so we'll do that now. So we'll just go B just pressed is equal to false. B just released equals false. Cool, that's it for the button. So awesome, now that we've finished the button, let's make some keys. If we use direct key codes from SDL, we don't really need to make some constants. However, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to make some Scion constexpr values in keys.h. And we haven't made keys.h, so let's make that now. Right here in inputs, add new header file, keys.h. There's a lot of keys that we could be mapping, so I've already done this, so I'm actually just going to copy this over and plug it in. Awesome, there we go. Let's get rid of this here. This all works nice and well, so we have a key unknown, -1, and we'll be setting that in the input manager that we do later. And down here, these all have decent numbers. However, see this here? The pause has a big ass number, or a big number, excuse my language. And some of these have huge numbers, so we can't really just put it into an array. SDL changed the way that they did the key codes from SDL 1.2 to SDL 2 and beyond. So now it takes this key code and does this scan to key code, which changes the value. it shifts it over. So we end up with these very large values. I'm not sure why they did it. It was probably to deal with different keyboard styles. I'm not sure. We end up with these large values. And since we have these large values, we don't really want to make just an array to hold these. We're going to have to do it in a different way. So now that we have our keys, let's actually make our keyboard. Add new, and the same idea. It is keyboard.h. So what are we going to need? We're going to need our keys. So let's include our keys. And as we said in the beginning, each keyboard has a button, or all our input devices have buttons. And then we're going to use a map. Now, we could use an array for these keys and find some offset way to do this. I've done this before. It kind of looks a bit hacky, where we take that value in and we change it to be a value that will work for a smaller array. Because we don't want an array with, what is that, 1 billion? I'm not going to count it right now. That doesn't make sense to us. So what we're going to do is just use a map to hold our keys. It's a bit more legwork because we got to add all the keys in, but we only got to do it one time, so that's okay. So namespace, and this will be Scion, windowing, and inputs as well. Cool. Now that we have our namespace there, we can go class, keyboard, and private. We're only going to have one private variable, and that's going to be our map. std map int to button, and that's going to be m. We'll call it map buttons. Cool. And then public, and we're going to have our constructor keyboard, and our destructor can just be false, or default, sorry. Cool. Now, if you don't like the way that we do the map here, if you find it a bit messy, you can make it an array and have a convert value, where you're converting the large values into a smaller values. Just let me know in the comments if you want to do that, and I will post a way to do that easily. However, we're going to do this in the video. So for now, we need to have a few functions. So we're going to need a update function, or it could be a reset function. You can call it reset if you like, because in reality, we're just resetting the state of each button on each frame for the update function, okay? And this will basically be done after you process any events. And if we go to our application here, we have our process events. So our key events happen here. This is where we'll be setting the values of the current button or key, and we're gonna have to add key up as well. But down here in our update, wherever our update is, I can just click on this. I probably went right past it real fast. Right here, this is where we're going to need to update our keyboard. However, we'll get into that later. We still have a lot of work to do, a lot of legwork, sorry. All right, so now we have to go void on key pressed. So is the key pressed? And we want to send in the key. And the same for released, and the same, so it's pressed, presses are held, and then we have just pressed and just released as well. Cool. We also want to have some getters, not necessarily getters. These won't really be accessible outside in Lua. The only ones that will be accessible in Lua will be bool is key pressed. And I'll take in an int key is key just pressed and is key just released. Just pressed and just released. Let's actually make these const as well. Sorry, here. Const. Cool. That's our functions there. So let's actually make this now. Create declarations. This should do this all for us in keyboard.cpp. Awesome. Let's go to that. And this is a bit more functions. So we're going to do our namespace. Let's take this. Put this in here. And let's get rid of all of this. Almost done. And we'll get rid of that. All right, so now we have our map here and we need to add in all of our keys or all of our buttons in. So I've already done this and it's big and ugly, but you only have to do it one time. And this is it right here. I copied it. I'm not gonna write it all here because there's a lot of buttons or a lot of keys. Map buttons there. So if you don't want to use any of these keys with high values, then you don't have to worry about this. You can just make an array and loop through an array rather than doing finds with the map. But since some of these keys are necessary to use, like if you're up and down, like key left is a big number. So you may want to use these keys. So it's better just to do this or create that function that will convert the values, which is doable. I have done that function. So if you do want to do it that way, let me know and we can get that in. All right, otherwise we're good to go. So let's actually quickly add in the logger. Include logger. Oh, we don't even have the logger here. Let's add that in now. So here, this doesn't know anything about the logger, so we need to go add, reference. We already had, yeah, it's missing a lot of things. So let's add in the logger, good. And then since we've added in the logger as a reference, let's also add it in to our VC++ directories. Here, cool. Here, go to our dependencies, not dependencies, sorry, we don't need it, that. We need the logger, and might as well just go into logger. Cool, and we can get rid of all of this here, and go solution dir. Cool, good, okay, okay. I should be able to see my logger now. Let's add it in, include logger.h, awesome. So in our update function, it's basically a reset function. We're going to loop through all of our buttons and reset the state for them. So for auto reference, we can go key button. You don't really need a structure binding here because I'm not going to be accessing the key. I just want the button. However, I find it looks cleaner. And map buttons. And we're going to go button.reset. Bang, that's it. So we don't really have to worry about these getting changed because we're only giving it a private access. Like there's no access to the actual map itself, only to these functions, and these functions are not going to be changing any of the actual keys. There's going to be no adding, nothing like that. It's all just going to be changing the state of the button itself. So on key press, the first thing we're going to do is get an iterator. So we go auto and we'll say key iter is equal to mapbuttons.find. And we're going to look for that key, okay? And if we want to check here, we go if key iter is equal to mapbuttons.end. Then we're going to want to leave. So we go Scion error key does not exist. And we send in the key. And we're just going to return here. But before we do that, let's actually do a quick check to see if the key is unknown or not. So we go if key is equal to key unknown, which is going to be -1. Here we just want to return, but we will send an error for now. Key is unknown. Is unknown. And just return. So we have those two returns. So if our key is not set, a key unknown, so -1, then we're going to look in for the map. If it's in the map, if it's not in the map, we're going to say that the key doesn't exist that we're sending in. If it is in the map, all we want to do is go key iter second dot update. And then this one is on key press, and that is true. We want to update the state to true. Cool. We can actually copy all of this, because most of it works for us. Go do on key just pressed. Actually, we don't need this here. We can get rid of this. And this can just be changed to on key release, not just press, just released, because that gets updated in, sorry guys, that gets updated in the button. So here, let's get rid of this function. It's not needed. And go to this, on key released. That's all we need. Should be good now. Go back, paste this in. Awesome. Sorry about that. So on key pressed, on key released. That's the only two that we need inside of the engine, and this will be changed in the process events of our SDL application. And this will be, since it's being released, this is getting changed to false. Okay, and since we still have that copied in the queue, we can basically do all the rest for this. Cool. So this will return false now because we're actually returning a value. This will also return false here. And if the key is pressed, we want to just return second be pressed. Is pressed. Cool. And let's copy all of this. Go down to here. Plug that in. This one is just pressed, so it changes to be is or just pressed. Copy it back in here. And then this changed to just released. Be just released. All right. Awesome. So that's basically our keyboard there. Now what we want to do now is create our input manager. So let's go into core, and here in our, we're just going to put it in scripting. We could create another folder for it, but I'm just going to put it into scripting, and we go here, new, and we're just going to call it input manager.h. Awesome. So there's our input manager.h, and what we're going to need first is to include our windowing, and this doesn't know anything about windowing, so we're going to have to add this in as well. So here, Scion core, add reference, doesn't know anything about this, so we're going to add that in, and then let's go into our properties and go here, add in our windowing, development, not dependencies, Scion window, and we'll go into windowing. Grab this, go solution dir, cool, okay, apply, and we should be good. We can go into our librarian. See, we already have SDL, which is great. Cool. All right, so now that we have our inputs and everything referenced, we can get our inputs. So inputs, and we want the keyboard. Okay, and we're also going to want memory, and we're also going to want sol.hpp. Awesome. Now we're going to be adding a lot more to the input manager in coming videos. However, for now, we're just going to get started with the keyboard. We only have one input manager, so we're going to make it into a singleton as well. But first, let's go using namespace, Scion, windowing, and inputs. Cool. And we're going to say namespace. We're just going to put this into the Scion core. And we're going to call it class input manager. And for now, we're just going to have one private variable, and that's going to be, an std unique pointer of a keyboard. And we'll call it mp keyboard. And we did say that this is going to be a singleton. So we're going to call input, the input manager constructor will be private. And we'll also have the input manager. This will be default. We're also going to want to delete the input manager copy constructor. And we also want to delete the assignment operator. Input manager, reference operator equals cool. And we're also going to have another private functions here. We're going to want to create some bindings for the keys to Lua. so we can have an actual name to the key that we call directly from Lua. So instead of just giving it a number or an integer value, Lua will have what we give as a named integer value. So we'll say static void register Lua key names sol state reference Lua. Okay, public. Again, our constructor, everything, because we only want one input manager. There's no reason for us to have two, so I'm using a singleton pattern here. A lot of people don't like singletons, but we're going to use it. And here we're going to say static input manager reference, and this is just get instance. Cool. And then we're also going to have another static create Lua input bindings. And that also takes in a sol state reference, Lua. Oh, sorry, static void. And then here we want just inline keyboard reference, and that's get keyboard. And that's just going to return dereferenced of our pointer. Return dereferenced MP keyboard. Cool. All right, so now let's create these. Awesome, that was created for us. And let's get rid of this and go to our input manager.cpp. And we're going to put our namespace here. I know it only looks like a few functions, but that's only for now. We're going to be adding the mouse in, and we're also going to be adding in gamepads and other things as we go. So let's cut this, put this in, and get rid of all this extra fluff. Awesome. All right, so we can do this one first because it's pretty easy. Just static input manager, and we'll just call this instance. Oh, and it'll create the input manager, and here we just want to return the instance. Cool. Because this is static, it will only be created one time, and then we'll basically just have a singleton. It won't recreate it, it'll just return the instance. Now register the Lua key names. Again, this is another one that is rather large, so I just have this queued up here. I'm just gonna copy them over and paste. So here, if you take a look, all we're doing is taking a lua.set, and we're creating a name here, and we're putting it to our context for in key here. So every time we type in key A or key, all these keys inside of Lua, it'll actually be converted to one of these values that we give it. So here, that's that billion value. All right, so now all we have to do is create our Lua input bindings. So here, we're actually gonna wanna get the input manager, get the instance of it, and also get the keyboard for the input manager. So we go like this, auto reference input manager is equal to get instance. Now if it hasn't been created yet, it will be created here, okay? And then we go auto reference keyboard is equal to input manager dot get keyboard. All right. Now we want to create a new keyboard user type. There should only ever be one keyboard necessary in our game. So we're not going to allow the creation of keyboards in Lua. You will just need to access the engine's keyboard. Now, currently, I haven't found a reason to have more than one keyboard access, but this is what we're going to do for now. If we need to change it later, we will. Okay, so we go Lua.new user type. We've done this before, and just send in the keyboard. Okay. And then we just say keyboard. And here we want sol no constructor. Sol no constructor. Cool. And then we want to just have our three functions. It'll be just pressed. And just pressed will be a lambda function that takes in a reference int, or captures a reference, sorry, takes in a key and return keyboard dot is just pressed, and that just takes in the key. Cool. And then we can copy this twice. We need to put a comma for this one and this one, and then this one will be just released. Whoops, just released. And this one will just be pressed. And then we have to just change our functions here. Is key pressed, is key just released. Just released. Awesome. Okay, so there's our bindings for our keyboard. We're almost done. So now we also want to call this here, this register key names, inside of here. We'll call this first. Just send in our Lua. Cool. So we'll register our key names and all of this. Now we got to go to our scripting system and we have to bind everything in here. So GLM bindings, and this one is input manager. Awesome. And then down here where we're binding everything already, we can go Scion core input manager, create Lua input bindings. Ooh, awesome. So that's done there. We're almost done. Now we just got to go to the application and actually update our keys. So here, let's add in our input manager. So we go include, and that would be scripting. So we have to put core first. Core scripting input manager. Cool, we got that there. And then down here, right here. So in the process events, we want to grab our input manager and the keyboard to update the keys based on which key is actually pushed. So we want to go auto reference input manager is equal to Scion core input manager get instance. Okay, so the input manager was most likely already created, and if not, it's getting created right here. And then auto reference keyboard is equal to input manager get keyboard. That'll get the keyboard for us. And then down here we can go on our key down, we go keyboard dot on key pressed, and we want to send in the M event. Actually, we can just copy this here. Cool, copy this. Actually, we can copy all of this. Case SDL key up, and change this to on released. And then in here in our application, let's actually add in our inputs as well. Don't think we need it, but we're going to add it in anyway. So here, let's go include windowing inputs keyboard. So we'll just add in our keyboard, bring it down. And this should, I'm not sure why it's not happy, but we're going to see. And then we basically want to do the same thing. Let's grab this here. And then our update function, right at the end, wherever it is, right here. Here, let's update inputs, update the inputs. And then we go keyboard, update. Cool. All right, so let's quickly build to see if we have any errors. So we'll build solution, see what happens. And I already see some errors here. Not all control paths return a value. So let's go back to that. These need to be returned. So if you guys have been following along, we're actually not returning anything here. So we need to fix that. You guys probably already caught that. It's just something I didn't see. I bet you did catch that. So let's return these. Okay. Yeah, so it cannot even, it can, it's just we have a problem here. Also, another thing is I never created this constructor. So in our input manager, we have to go back and create our constructor. So here we'll put it up here. Input manager, input manager constructor. Cool. And we actually want to go MP keyboard, and that is std make unique keyboard. Cool. Now that should work. Let's go back to our application and everything should, let's try to build again. This might all go away. So build. It's looking happy so far. Let's see our error list. Errors are gone. We have some warnings, but we'll take care of those later. Still doesn't like this file. I'm not sure why. Probably missed something else. What else did I miss? Let's go to our outputs. All right, sorry about that, guys. That was a problem here for my linking. So when I was doing my VC++ directories, I was actually putting it in the wrong place. So here, down here in my window, I had it looking for solution dir Scion2D, then Scion window, but then it had no idea where that was. So I actually had to change it to this. So hopefully you guys caught that before me, but that's all you have to do, fix that, and it should build from where we're at. And if we just build, and it runs. So it's running now for us. Awesome. Okay, so now that we know that it's running and we're not blowing anything up, if we go to our application, these things should look good now. Yep, so there we go. Those are good. And in our update, we should be updating. Cool. So it's updating. So we're just going to do something really quick inside of our main.lua. So if we go to our main.lua file, we're just going to come down here and we can get rid of this. We just want to go if keyboard is, so we can go just pressed. And we send in our key binding, so we can just go key W. Then we're just going to print key W was just pressed. And we can copy all this and go else if, and change this to key S. Key S was just pressed. Copy this again. And paste again, and then end, change these to A and D, so our WASD keys, A and D. A was just pressed, A and D. All right, let's build again and see if we got it. So come here, and we just go. Awesome, there we go, our keyboard is working. And you can change it to pressed, or you can change it to just released. So let's change it to pressed, and that'll mean if we hold the key, it'll change. And if we hold A, awesome, there we go. All right, that's it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, give a like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed or liked it already. And in the next video, we're actually going to get into the mouse and maybe the gamepad, depending on how long it takes. So there's a little challenge for you if you would like, or take this entity here, the big testy that we made already with the animation component, and try to move that entity with your new keyboard. You can create a new function here, like just call it function update player or update entity. Entity would probably be better. Entity. Cool. And do something inside of there where you're taking the entity. Remember, the entity currently is just a global object that we're using, so you can just reference it in here, or you could send it in here and change whatever its name you want. Now, I already did something that shows how to do this. If you check out engine video where I show where the engine is now, like the current development branch, so you can check that out right here. And in this video, I actually already somewhat do that. If you want, if you need it for a reference, if not, give it a shot. If you have any questions, please leave them comment below and I'll make sure to get back to you. All right, so take it easy.